Good morning, students. Today, we shall discuss the chapter in your history book, Nazism and the Rise of Hitler. In this chapter, we shall discuss the reasons how and why Hitler rose in power, means how he reached to the top of power. National Socialist German Workers' Party, which was later on renamed as Nazi Party. The story starts from the First World War and ends in the Second World War. In the First World War, or during the 20th century, when Germany used to be a very powerful empire, it fought the First World War along with the Austrian Empire against the Allied forces. The Allied forces comprised the countries Britain, France, and Russia. And the Axis forces were Germany, Italy, and Japan. Germany was hoping to gain some quick success by expanding its empire. For that, it waged the war. And what we see that with the entry of US in the First World War in 1917, Germany lost the First World War. And the effect of the First World War, though, felt across Europe, right, which almost left Europe of its resources. And it had severe effect on Germany, particularly. Powerful, why Hitler came into the picture could be traced back to the conditions that arose soon after the First World War. As I said, that Germany lost, and after the defeat of Germany in the First World War, when the Allied forces won, they imposed harsh treaty like Treaty of Versailles. All the overseas colonies which Germany used to possess were taken away. Much of its resource rich Rhineland during the 1920s, almost whole of it, you can say, came in the control of the Allies. So, and we also see how Germany was demilitarized. The social, economic, and political conditions of Germany became very, very fragile, very, very disturbing, unstable. Right? After the First World War, the people who believed in parliamentary democracy, they got an opportunity to take over the administration of Germany. And though they were not liked well much by they were not received well by the German people, because they were forced to sign the peace treaty at Versailles, which was very harsh and humiliating. It was a national humiliation for the people of Germany. So we can say the rise of Hitler these conditions. And as we all know that Hitler was a powerful ruler, a powerful dictator. He was very ambitious, a dynamic personality. He wanted to make Germany a powerful empire again. For that, he wanted to occupy, wanted to take under the control more and more territories. And he wanted to actually take the revenge of the humiliation that Germany had suffered after the First World War. And it was because of the ambitious nature of Hitler that again in the year 1941 the world sees Second World War. Right? But this time too, when Germany loses, it had to surrender to the Allies. We see how during the last years of Second World War, there was a genocidal war also going on against the Jews and the crippled. So this chapter basically though starts with a story of a little child, 11-year boy, Helmut, who overheard his parents talking about whether to talking so. But as we know that Helmut's father was a member of the Nazi party, all those people who were the members of the Nazi party, they got scared of their insecurity. They've been filled with insecurity. They felt that now the Allied forces will take revenge from them, and they will be punished severely. What they did to the Jews, what they did to the disabled, now the Allied forces will do to them. So Helmut's father kills himself in his office, and that little child was so badly frightened that he refuses to eat at his home for the following 9 years, because he was afraid if his mother might poison him. So you can understand this is just one of several such stories wherein the members of Nazi party, those who had committed crime against war, crime against peace, and crime against humanity under the leadership of Hitler, now they are fearing for their lives. So many of them, though they were punished life imprisonment, and only 11 major Nazi leaders were sentenced to death. And we see Hitler and his propaganda minister Goebbels with his entire family commit suicide. And they also burn all the incriminating evidences so that the world doesn't come to know about the Holocaust, which so we can see that the genocidal war had resulted in the loss of 6 million Jews, 2 lakh gypsies, 1 million Polish civilians, 70,000 Germans, right? Even the Germans who were unfit or who were physically challenged, they were not spared. The Germans who were considered mentally and physically disabled, besides innumerable political opponents, Nazis devised an unprecedented means of killing people, that is, by gassing them in various killing centers like Auschwitz. The Nuremberg tribunal sentenced only 11 leading Nazis to death, as I had already said. So everyone came to feel that the rise of Nazi Germany could be partly traced back to the German experience at the end of the First World War. So what was the experience? See, there was a birth of a new political system. A Weimar Republic was born after Germany loses in the First World War in November 1918. We see the defeat of Imperial Germany and the abdication of Emperor gave an opportunity to parliamentary parties to recast German polity. So they now have come up with a new system of government in which there will be an elected government with a constitution with a federal structure. So deputies were now elected to German parliament or Reichstag on the basis of equal and universal adult franchise, universal votes cast by all adults, including women. The peace treaty at Versailles, which made Germany responsible, which made Germany lose all its um territories, the overseas territories that it had acquired earlier, right? And we see 13% of territories has been lost to the Allies, 75% of its islands, and 26% of coal to France, Poland, Denmark, and Lithuania. The Allied powers demilitarized Germany to weaken its power. There was an act passed that was called the War Guilt. So that held Germany responsible for the wars and damages the Allied countries suffered. Germany was forced to pay compensation amounting to £6 billion. Right. The Allied armies also occupied the resource-rich Rhineland for much of the 1920s. Many Germans held the new Weimar Republic responsible for not only the defeat in the war but the disgrace at Versailles. The effects of the war felt across Europe. Unfortunately, the infant Weimar Republic was being made to pay for the sins of the old empire, because it was believed that old empire had was because of which only the First World War was waged. So now the Weimar Republic unfortunately had to pay for the sins of the old empire. The republic carried the burden of war guilt and national humiliation and was financially crippled. It became financially bankrupt. All its financial resources dried up by and Democrats. They became the easy targets. They were made fun of by the people, those who believed in old institutions. They're called conservatives. The First World War changed the political system. It, it changed the very psychology of people, because it left a very deep imprint on the psychology of people, on the thinking, on the mindset of people. What we came to realize here is that this life of a soldier came to be placed upon a civilian's life. Trench life of soldiers were given more glorification. They were glorified the trench life, though in reality it was very difficult life for the soldiers. They had to live nearby the dead bodies and with rats feeding upon them. Right? So people started longing for a dictatorship, and democracy that time was a new idea. So uh, most of the people did not have faith in democratic uh, government, as we had seen that the Weimar Republic was being mocked at by the conservatives, and the people in general also started believing that the Weimar Republic was responsible for the defeat in the war and the disgrace, that the national humiliation that it had suffered. So political radicalism and economic crisis. See, the birth of Weimar Republic coincided with the revolutionary uprisings of the Spartacist League on the pattern of the Bolsheviks revolution. Right, so Soviet of workers and sailors was established, and this is one of the pictures of a rally organized by the radical groups known as the Spartacist League, and this became quite common during those days. So there were several Soviets that were established in many cities. The political atmosphere in Berlin was charged with demands for Soviet-style governance. Okay, communists and socialists henceforth became irreconcilable enemies and could not make common cause against Hitler. Both revolutionaries and militant nationalists craved for radical solutions. Now people started longing for a complete change in the government. I mean, they were not at all satisfied or happy with the Weimar Republic there. They wanted a dictatorship there. Political radicalization was accompanied by economic crisis. There was a situation of hyperinflation, right? As Germany had fought the war largely on loans and had to pay for war reparations in gold, this depleted gold reserves at a time when the resources were scarce. In 1923, Germany refused to pay, and the French occupied its leading industrial area, Ruhr, to claim their coal. Germany, showed its passive resistance, took the revenge, showing it, started printing a lot of paper currency. And with too much printed money in circulation, the value of German mark fell. The value of German mark fell. One mark is the as the value of mark collapsed, prices of goods soared. So inflation is a situation wherein the value of currency goes down and the prices of goods goes up. And this was a situation of hyperinflation, which is an extreme situation of hyperinflation. The image of Germans carrying cartloads of currency notes to buy a loaf of bread was widely publicized in newspapers, evoking worldwide sympathy. This crisis came to be known as hyperinflation, a situation when prices rise phenomenally high, so extremely high. Eventually, the Americans intervened and bailed Germany out of the crisis by introducing the Davis Plan, which reworked the terms of reparation to ease the financial burden, to reduce or to make the financial burden on Germany little less. The years of depression, though the years between 1924 and 1928 saw some stability, there was some stability, you can say, but this stability was, just for a short time only. It was built on sand. You can understand that how uh, unpredictable it was. Anytime the situation again could go into the worst of a kind. So German investments and industrial recovery were totally dependent on short-term loans, largely from the USA. And this support was withdrawn when the Wall Street Exchange crashed in 1929. So people started making frantic efforts. And this was with the collapse of the Wall Street Exchange in the USA in 1929. It started by the economic crisis. By 1932, industrial production was reduced to 40% of the 1929 level. So you can understand the darkest hour that time. Workers lost their jobs or were paid reduced wages. Right? The number of unemployed touched an unprecedented 6 million people. On the streets of Germany, you would see men with placards around their necks saying, willing to do any work. So even educated people of Germany, they were ready to do the kind of work which could be done by unskilled laborers also. So you can say that there was widespread unemployment, and because of which people were ready to even clean toilet. Even educated people were ready to even clean toilet for a penny. So as jobs disappeared, the youth took to criminal activities and total despair became commonplace. So there was a situation of complete hopelessness that surrounded the Germany. The economic crisis created deep anxieties and fears in people. The middle classes, especially salaried employees and pensioners, their savings they saw their savings reduce when the currency lost its value. small businessmen, the self-employed, and the retailers suffered as their businesses got ruined, their businesses got destroyed. These sections of society were filled with the fear of proletarianization, a situation in which a person who might be living a royal life, but because of unemployment, because of inflation, because of there was a complete despair, so businesses getting ruined. So the person who might have been living a lavish life, his rank would reduce to that of a laborer only. So you can understand the situation of proletarianization when the rank of a person reduces, or status of a person reduces to that of uh, a very low paid worker, or a helpless laborer, you can say. So the ranks of working class, or worse still, the unemployed. Only organized workers could manage to keep their heads above water. So people, those who are working in the organized sector, they could survive this harsh time, this odd time. They could only, and anyhow they could survive. But unemployment weakened their bargaining power. Big business was in crisis, right? So mothers were filled with a sense of deep despair. They could not fill their children's stomachs. Politically too, also Weimar Republic, as we can see, that was very fragile. As we know that it was based on the principle of equal representation. So there was hardly a time when any single political party would come with a majority on its own and form the government. So there was always a situation for, always a possibility for a coalition government. And you know the helplessness of coalition government, they cannot, most of the time they remain weak, they cannot take decisions, and that's why being a and the political instability also, we can say that that on an average of 200, an average of 239 days. And there was an liberal use of an article 48, the liberal use of article 48, as and when there was a uh, need for imposing this article 48, it was implemented. And this article 48 would, the article 48 would give the president the powers to impose emergency and suspend civil rights and rule by decree, right? So there would be a kind of emergency in which all the civil rights would be taken away. So these were the three reasons were there. One is the coalition government's own helplessness, uh, and because of the requirement of because of the rule of proportionate representation, there was hardly a chance for any single political party to come on its own, to come with its majority of its own, but would always have to work with the other political parties, forming an alliance and thereby a coalition government ruling. Okay, so coalition government would always be a weak government, and that's why people started longing for a dictatorship, right? People lost confidence in democratic parliamentary system, which seemed to offer no solutions. So after this we shall discuss Hitler's rise to power. So by now we must have understood the social, economic and political situation that led to the creation of situations for the rise of Hitler.